Hi, how you doing today? Okay, I want to share a vision I had with you. I call it the vision in the white room. It was right before I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And I was living back in West Virginia. And I was sleeping on a friend's couch. And I was, previous to that, I was seeking the Lord about the baptism of the Holy Spirit, not telling anybody about what I was seeking, reading books, listening to preachers, going to different churches, and reading the Bible a lot. But I wasn't understanding a lot about the Bible. I didn't. I was falling asleep sometimes listening to it or trying to read it, and so I had gone through my first divorce. And I felt kind of unclean because I wasn't supposed to get a divorce. So I kept asking God to forgive me. I remember going to one of the churches, one of the Baptist churches that I back in West Virginia that I originally went to when I was a kid. So I was going back to the beginning, my roots, to try to find answers. And I remember at the end of the service, one of the elders was talking to me in the back, and I told him, that I'd gone through a divorce, and he says, "You know what this means, brother?" And I said, "No, what's that?" He goes, "It means you can never get married again." I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it's in the Bible." And so I was like, okay, well, I had feelings and I had desires and stuff like that. And and I went and studied out a few scriptures, and I was like, man, that made me feel even more unclean. So I kept asking God to forgive me and begging him to forgive me. So back to this vision, I call the vision the white room. I had fallen asleep. This is a couple weeks maybe after what had happened. And before I went to sleep, I was asking God to forgive me again. And I just felt so dirty and unclean. And so all of a sudden, again, all these things happen seemed to like 3:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, I'm in this white room. It's a square white room. And there's a platform in the center of the room. And I'm laying flat on the platform. And with my hands to my side. And there's no windows, no doors or nothing. And all of a sudden, on my right side, Jesus walked through the wall. Well, how do I know it was Jesus? Well, he didn't have to tell me he was Jesus. I just knew. He was dressed in white, like a robe, and he had a neatly trimmed beard. And he walked right over to my right side, and he took my left hand, right hand, and put it on top of me. Then he put his hands on top of mine. And all of a sudden, he looked up, and he said, "Father, have you forgiven him of his sins?" And this was no dream. And I felt the feelings, the anticipation of waiting for an answer from the Almighty Judge. I felt all that. And all of a sudden, I heard a voice. And the voice was like waters. It was like, it went through me. And it says, "Yes, I have forgiven him of his sins." And then when I heard that, I thought, yeah, right. I felt like I was going to trick God and say, yeah, right. Because I remember when the last time I asked for forgiveness, which was the night before. I don't know why I had that thought, but I did. Then all of a sudden, Jesus, with his hand still on top of mine, he says, "Father, when have you forgiven him of his sins?" He read my thought. And all of a sudden, it was that waiting again. I felt all the anticipation, the feelings of everything, waiting for an answer from the Almighty Judge. And all of a sudden, I heard the voice again. It was like waters. It went through, it was like through the room. And it went through me, and it says, "Yes, last night." And when I heard he said last night, all of a sudden, Jesus stood up, and he took and as soon as he stood up, I said, "What about my mom?" I'm not sure why I said, "What about my mom?" Because she didn't pass away until 2008. And he said to me, he says, "Don't worry about her. She's already there." And all of a sudden, he stood up and took his right hand right above my head. And if you ever seen the movie The Matrix, like the first Matrix, there's like a liquid. He took his hand and he started going from my head all the way down. And it was like a liquid that came over my body, and he went all the way down. And it was, as he was moving, this liquid, like a wax liquid, was going all the way down to the soles of my feet. And all of a sudden, when he was done, he stood there, and my body lifted off the platform. And all of a sudden, I woke. And I woke up, and then I knew the Bible, because I had a Bible sitting there. I was reading it before I went to bed that night. And I had this desire about the word for the word. And all of a sudden, I had interpretation. I mean, I understood the Bible. I don't know how to explain all that to you. I'm just explaining to you what happened to me. And I had interpretation. I mean, from that moment on forward, and I'll get into a few other videos, what happened after that before I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. But I had, the Bible was alive, and I understood. Nobody had to explain it to me anymore. I was listening to, back then, it was a Walkman. I got the Bible on cassette. I was pumping it in, and I was listening to it in my car. I was listening to it while I was working out, running, exercising, and I understood it. Nobody didn't have to explain it to me anymore. I understood. I had interpretation. And from that moment on, even to this day in 2022, almost 2023, I can't get enough of the word, and I understand it. I have the interpreter on the inside. And if somebody wants to say, that it's not interpreted that way, that doesn't really mean that way, I don't really get into that anymore, because I understand. Well, I hope this was a help to you. Have a great day.